So with the tweet from last week that talked heavily about how Melee is changing and how they're going to change it and basically how they feel about it, I wanted to go ahead and share my Melee build for my Arc Hunter because, just Melee sounds fun and they're specifically going to be buffing Melee or Glaive and Triton Vice. So, here's my build around those said exotics. So, we're going to go ahead and be on Arc Hunter with Triton Vice and Edge of Concurrence. You'll see why in a few, but basically it's Glaive and it jolts and it's just a Glaive and it jolts. All right, for our subclass setup, you can have whatever super you want, basically anything you want that feels fun. I like Storm Dance just because it's fun and new. For your abilities, I recommend Gambler's Dodge just for that extra bit of melee regeneration, but you can choose whatever you want if you really want to use this to help buff your Glaive melee. For your jump, whatever you want. You can either have disorienting melee or combination melee. Either one's really good, but I like disorienting better because it applies bolt. It blinds, amplifies you, and grants you bolt charge when you'd use it. For your grenade, you can use whatever you want. I like flashbang because it blinds. For our aspects, this is where it's a little more important. You can have Tempest Strike, you're going to have Tempest Strike because of the bottom text there. Defeating jolted targets grants stacks of bolt charge. On top of that, you can actually use it by putting your glaive up, sliding and meleeing, and doing the uppercut attack to basically get that damages and jolt targets when it hits. And again, primarily we're using this for the bottom text to generate more bolt charge. For our second aspect, we have Ascension. Ascension is quite literally just jump in the air and twirl. It amplifies you and your allies, so a little more team synergy there. And it jolts targets. So it's easy jolt from this, and this allows us to kill jolted targets for what? Bolt charge. For our fragments, we want to use Spark of Frequency because melee hits increase our equipped weapons' reload speed and stability for a short duration. And guess what we're doing? We have a glaive. Basically, you're punching with the glaive, buffs your equipped weapons' reload speed and stability for a short duration, primarily for the reload speed. Now, for the bottom effect, while amplified, the effects are increased and you gain increased stacks of bolt charge from all sources. So again, buffing our glaive and giving ourselves more bolt charge in the process. For our second fragment, we have Spark of Discharge. Arc weapon final blows have a chance to generate ionic traces, and collecting an ionic trace gives us bolt charge. And again, more ionic traces gives us ability energy. So just feeding into the subclass even more with more bolt charge and ability energy regeneration. And then for our third one, we can have Spark of Ions. Defeating a jolted target with a bolt charge creates an ionic trace. Again, more ionic traces spawning. Again, doing more damage, add clear, and more ability energy. Now we can have, for our fourth one, we can have Spark of Beacons. While you're amplified, your special and heavy weapon final blows create a blinding explosion. Now you can play around with this slot with either A, the one that says your arc grenades jolt targets, or Spark of Beacons. It's either one, user's choice. I recommend this one because it allows us to have more usability out of our glaive and our heavy weapon if it's arc. For our fifth and final one, we can have Spark of Amplitude. Rapidly defeating targets while you're amplified generates Orbs of Power. So again, Orbs of Power gives us ability energy, damage buffs, damage resistance, more health regeneration, all that stuff. Just really good for all around build purposes. Moving on to our armor. Basically, you can use for your helmet, you want Dynamo, Harmonic Siphon for the extra orb generation off of arc kills because your glaive is arc, and then Hands On for more super energy from melee kills when you decide to finally use the slide melee bit. For our gauntlet, which is Triton Vice, we have Heavy Handed and Focusing Strike and Fastball. Just, more stuff around our melee. For our chest piece, it's just the same basic setup. For your boots, I recommend Better Already and Reciprocation, just for more survivability off of orb pickup because you're already spawning orbs. And then same thing, you can run whatever you want here, but I like Insulation because I want to get my class ability faster. And for our class armor, we can have Bomber, Reaper, and Powerful Attraction. It is pretty much user's choice down here, but that's the setup I use. Now, for the physical reason why we use Triton Vice, because it increases glaive reload speed and melee damage when surrounded. Because this build, we're going to be in the middle of all these adds and big targets, giving this weapon a buff. This applying this buff. Basically, it's just surrounded for glaives. And then glaive melee final blows overflow rounds into the magazine, and glaive projectile final blows detonate in an explosion. So, just more benefits for our glaive. For our weapons, you can use whatever primary you want. I'm currently using a sidearm for the place I'm in. For shield barrier. For our glaive, you're going to be using Edge of Concurrence because it's an arc weapon and it benefits from our fragment that allows us to blind targets off kills. For its normal trait, you have Lightning Seeker. Pressing R when fully charged, because it's a glaive, consumes the charge before firing to make your next shot track targets across the ground, jolting them, basically feeding into our subclass. And then its bottom part here, don't need to worry about this, but for this, sustained projectile damage causes targets to become what? Jolted. Again, feeding into our subclass. So, just all around really good for Arc and Triton Vice. For a heavy, you can use, again, whatever you want. I prefer Hullabaloo just because it has Rolling Storm and Envious Arsenal. But, I can use whatever I want here. You can use whatever you want here and here. It's just primarily you want Edge of Concurrence and Triton Vice on the Arc subclass. All feeding into on it, itself, giving yourself more Bolt Charge, Amplify, Orb Generation, Ionic Traces. And we're going to go ahead and show you a little bit of gameplay here. With the build, just go ahead. I'm in a Master Lost sector. I know for a lot of people this probably isn't going to go be like, oh, this is great and high-end content, but it just suffices and quick to show you. So we're going to go ahead and shoot, proc, and get our charged glaive. So we're going to proc it by holding our reload button and then shoot it on the ground. Now you're going to notice it takes a second to hit flying targets, but it allows us to jolt and apply more pressure on adds across the floor. And if you notice, I'm bolt charging in the process. Melee, get my Amplify back. Let me kill that overload real quick. That guy is a shitter. Again, jolting. Also purposes in that as well. Bonk. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Again, all this is just for high ad clear and survivability. Basically, spreading blind, jolt, and giving yourself Amplify and these buffs in said process. Oh, I didn't reload. No. Don't worry about that. But again, just about survivability and just putting pressure on adds. It's really fun, hyperactive build that allows you to play in some high-level stuff where light level does tend to matter, and that. Oop, hold on. Let me not die to these chickens. Wah. But ow. But yeah, that's basically what this build is. I know I'm not playing too well. I'm not focused. But again, hope this build's fun for you. If you need help, ask questions or comment or whatever you need. Again, don't be afraid to ask for help or questions. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.